I watched my house explode from a hillside while my wife called me, sobbing, thinking I was dead inside. But here's the thing. I wasn't supposed to be watching. I was supposed to be Ash. My 8-year-old son saved my life 30 minutes earlier when he grabbed my arm in the airport parking lot and whispered the words that made my blood run cold. "Daddy, please don't go home." Mommy said something about collateral damage on the phone. She said the gas would make it look like an accident. I'm an engineer. I design safety systems for a living. And in that moment, staring at my son's terrified eyes, I realized my wife had studied my own blueprints to kill us both. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to Morrison Hill, the spot where Kinsley and I had our first date, where we could see our entire neighborhood. Lucas was shaking in the passenger seat, and I pulled him close, whispering that everything would be okay, even though my heart was hammering so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. We sat there in the dark, rain drumming on the roof, and I watched our street. At 9:47 p.m., I saw 2 men walk up to my front door. They didn't break in. They used a key, my wife's key. They were inside for maybe 4 minutes, and then they came out, moving fast, almost running to a dark sedan parked 3 houses down. At 9:52 p.m., my house exploded. The sound rolled up the hill like thunder, and I felt it in my chest. This deep, horrible boom that shook the car. Orange flames punched through the windows, through the roof, turning our home into a funeral pyre. Lucas screamed and buried his face in my jacket, and I just sat there, frozen, watching everything we owned turn to black smoke and falling embers. The neighborhood lit up like daylight. People poured out of their houses. And my phone rang. Kinsley. I let it ring twice before I answered. "Oh my God, Liam. Liam, are you there?" Her voice was pure panic, pure grief, pure performance. She was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. The house. I'm watching the news. Baby, please tell me you're not home. Please tell me you and Lucas didn't go back. I should have been screaming. I should have been crying. Instead, I felt this cold, surgical calm settle over me like ice water. I watched the flames reflected in my windshield and said, very quietly, "I'm watching it too, Kinsley. I'm watching it burn right now." Silence. Just for a heartbeat. Then her voice cracked, and she tried to recover. "Well, what? You're watching. Where are you? Are you safe? Is Lucas—" "We're safe," I said, cutting her off. "And I know you have the key. I saw them use it." The line went dead. My son looked up at me with tears streaming down his face and asked the question I didn't want to answer. Why does Mommy want us dead? I didn't have a good answer yet. But I was damn sure going to find out. And then, I was going to make her pay for every single lie, every calculated smile, every moment she looked at our son and saw him as nothing more than collateral damage. I couldn't go to the police. Not yet. Think about it. What did I have? A terrified kid's story and my own paranoid theory. Kinsley would cry. She'd play the devastated wife. She'd say Lucas misheard her, that I was having some kind of breakdown. She'd twist it. She's always been good at twisting things. No, I needed proof. Hard, undeniable. Lou, your coffin shut proof. So I drove Lucas to a motel off Highway 29, the kind of place that doesn't ask questions if you pay cash. I tucked him into bed, triple locked the door, and told him I'd be back before sunrise. He grabbed my hand so tight his little fingers went white. "Promise," he whispered. "Promise," I said. And I meant it. The airport was 40 minutes away, and I drove like a man possessed, my mind racing through every conversation, every smile, every time Kinsley kissed me goodbye over the last 6 months. How long had she been planning this? How long had I been sleeping next to someone who wanted me dead? I parked in the long-term lot where she'd left her car that morning. She was supposed to be visiting her sister in Portland for the week. Convenient timing. Almost too convenient. I had the spare key to her Lexus. The one she forgot I'd made 2 years ago after she locked herself out at the mall. She didn't know I had it. And that little oversight was about to cost her everything. I opened the trunk first. Nothing but her suitcase and a yoga mat. The back seat was clean, but when I opened the glove compartment, my hands started shaking. There, tucked under the insurance papers, was a burner phone, one of those cheap flip phones you buy at gas stations with cash. Next to it was a rolled-up set of papers. I unrolled them under the dome light, and my stomach dropped. They were my blueprints. The engineering plans for our house that I'd drawn up 3 years ago when we did the renovation. Every gas line, every electrical junction, every structural weak point. And written in Kinsley's handwriting, her neat, precise cursive, were notes in red ink. Compromise valve here, make it look like engineer error. Pilot light, tamper with sensor. Gas accumulation in basement, 20 min and window. She'd studied my own work like a hitman studying a target. She'd turned my blueprints into a murder manual, and she'd planned to blame me for it. If we died in that explosion, the investigation would have pointed to faulty engineering, to my negligence, to the possibility that I'd cut corners on my own home. My career would have been destroyed posthumously. My name would have been dragged through the mud, and Kinsley would have collected the life insurance as the grieving widow, free to start over with a clean slate and $4.5 million. I sat in that car, staring at those blueprints with my wife's handwriting all over them, and I felt something inside me break. Not my heart. That was already dead. It was something deeper. My faith in reality itself. I powered on the burner phone. It took a minute to boot up. And when it did, I saw a string of text messages between Kinsley and a contact saved as CI. The messages went back 4 months. I started reading, and with each line, my hands clenched tighter around that cheap plastic phone. CI was Chad Barrett. I knew him. He'd been at our Labor Day barbecue, laughing at my jokes, eating my food, shaking my hand. He was Kinsley's friend from the gym. Apparently, he was a lot more than that, and apparently, he owed someone a lot of money. The messages painted a picture so clear, so calculated, it made my skin crawl. Can't keep dodging Dimitri. He's gonna break my legs. How much do you owe him? $87K. I'm so screwed, babe. What if you didn't have to worry about money anymore? That's where it started. 4 months ago. And the messages got darker from there. They talked about the insurance policy, about how much we were worth dead, about Hawaii, some fantasy of them running away together, living on the beach, free from debt and responsibility. And then, 3 weeks ago, there was a message that made me want to put my fist through the windshield. What about Lucas? Chad had asked. And Kinsley, my wife, the mother of my child, had replied, collateral damage, necessary. Better he goes quick than lives as a burden. Kid's already too attached to Liam anyway. Clean slate, remember? I threw up right there in the parking lot. I opened the car door and vomited onto the asphalt, my whole body shaking with rage and grief and disbelief. When I finally caught my breath, I wiped my mouth and looked at that message again. She'd called our son a burden. She'd decided his life was worth less than her escape plan. And in that moment, my sadness crystallized into something cold and sharp and utterly focused. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to destroy her. I spent the rest of that night in my car, parked under a flickering streetlight in that airport lot, reading every single message on that burner phone. My eyes burned. My back ached. But I couldn't stop. Each text was another piece of the puzzle, another glimpse into the woman I thought I knew. There were messages about timing, make sure you're out of town, establish your alibi, and messages about the insurance payout schedule. Kinsley had done her homework. She knew the policy inside and out, knew exactly how long it would take for the money to clear, knew that accidental death paid double. She'd even researched which investigators would handle the case. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was premeditated murder with a business plan attached. Around 4 a.m., I found the message that made everything click into place. It was from 2 weeks ago, right after I'd told Kinsley about the promotion I'd been offered in Seattle. Good money, better opportunities, a fresh start for our family. I'd been excited. She'd smiled and said she was proud of me. But here, in black and white, was what she'd really been thinking. Liam's talking about Seattle again. If we move, I lose my leverage here. Dimitri won't wait. We need to do this now, before he accepts that job. She'd seen my success as a threat. My career advancement was going to ruin her murder timeline. So she'd accelerated the plan. Chad's responses were pathetic. He was clearly in over his head, scared of this Dimitri guy, terrified of what would happen if he didn't pay. But Kinsley, she was cold, clinical. Every message from her was calm, measured, strategic. She told him exactly what to do. Hire 2 guys from Dimitri's crew, guys who needed money and wouldn't ask questions. Give them the key, make sure they wore gloves, set the timer for 20 minutes after they left. Make it look like a gas leak, she'd written. Those happen all the time. And Liam's the one who did the renovation. Any investigation will point to him. She'd literally weaponized my own work against me. But here's what she didn't know. Here's what her arrogance made her overlook. I'm an engineer. I solve problems for a living. I take complex systems and break them down into manageable components. And as I sat there, reading her carefully laid plans, I started to engineer her destruction. First, I needed these messages to be irrefutable. I took photos of every single text with my own phone, then forwarded the entire message history to my encrypted email. Then I carefully placed the burner phone back exactly where I'd found it. Same angle, same position under the insurance papers. She couldn't know I'd been here. Second, I needed legal ammunition. I called my attorney. Well, technically, I called my attorney's emergency line at 4:47 a.m., Emberlyn Chase. She'd handled our house closing 3 years ago, but I knew she did criminal defense too. She was a shark in a blazer, the kind of lawyer who smiled while she eviscerated you on the stand. If anyone could help me navigate this nightmare, it was her. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice sharp despite the hour. This better be good, Harmon. My wife tried to murder me and my son last night, I said, and I can prove it. There was a pause. Then, I'll meet you at my office in an hour. Don't talk to anyone. Don't go home. And for God's sake, don't confront her. The drive to Emberlyn's office felt surreal. The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, and people were starting their normal days, grabbing coffee, heading to work, completely unaware that my entire world had imploded. I kept thinking about Lucas, asleep in that motel room, dreaming whatever innocent dreams 8-year-olds dream. He'd saved our lives. My baby boy had heard something he shouldn't have, understood the danger, and warned me. And Kinsley had looked at him and seen collateral damage. That thought kept me focused, kept me angry, kept me moving forward. Emberlyn's office was in a sleek building downtown, all glass and steel. She was waiting in the conference room with 2 thermoses of coffee and a yellow legal pad. I showed her everything, the blueprints, the photos of the texts, the timeline I'd constructed. She listened without interrupting, her face unreadable, making notes in her precise handwriting. When I finished, she looked up and said something that changed everything. Text messages can be contested in court. She'll claim her phone was stolen, that someone's framing her, that these are fabricated. What we need is a confession, on tape, in her own voice, with her own words, saying what she did. I stared at her. How the hell do we get that? Emberlyn smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. We give her exactly what she wants. We make her think she won. Emberlyn's plan was brilliant and terrifying in equal measure. She leaned back in her leather chair, fingers steepled under her chin, and laid it out like a chess game. Right now, Kinsley thinks you're dead. She thinks she got away with it. That confidence, that sense of safety, that's our weapon. She tapped her pen against the legal pad. People confess when they think they're untouchable, when they think there's no risk. So we let her believe the house explosion worked exactly as planned. We let her grieve publicly, collect the sympathy, start the insurance claim process, and then, when she's comfortable, when she's sure she's won, We introduced doubt. I felt my pulse quicken. What kind of doubt? Emberlyn pulled out her phone and started typing. I'm going to call her. Not as your attorney. She doesn't know I'm involved. I'll pose as an insurance investigator. I'll tell her we found remains in the debris, that the bodies are badly burned but dental records are being processed. I'll tell her the insurance company needs her to come sign preliminary paperwork to begin the claims process. $4.5 million doesn't just get handed over. There's always paperwork. And here's the key. She looked up, her eyes sharp as razors. I'll tell her she can pick up a partial advance check. Say, $100,000 to cover immediate expenses, funeral costs, temporary housing, that kind of thing. She won't be able to resist, I said, understanding dawning. Exactly. Greed overrides caution every single time. She'll come to that meeting thinking she's one step closer to the money, and you'll be there waiting. My stomach twisted. You want me to confront her? In public? Not confront. Not at first. I want you to sit down across from her like you're having a casual conversation. I want you to watch her face when she realizes you're alive. I want you to be calm, collected, almost friendly, and I want you to be wearing a wire. She slid a small black device across the table. This is a professional-grade recording system. Police use them for undercover operations. It'll capture every word in crystal-clear audio. I picked up the device. It was smaller than I expected, about the size of a thick button. What do I say to her? Emberlyn's smile turned predatory. You give her an out. You tell her you know Chad was involved, that he must have manipulated her, pressured her, maybe even threatened her. You make it seem like you're willing to believe she's a victim too. And here's the thing about narcissists, Liam, they can't help themselves. Give them an excuse and they'll reject it because the truth makes them feel smarter, more powerful. She'll want you to know how clever she was. She'll want credit for the plan. The psychology of it was almost elegant. I thought about Kinsley's need to be the smartest person in the room, how she'd always corrected people at dinner parties, how she'd gloat when she won at board games. Emberlyn was right. Kinsley wouldn't be able to resist proving she was the mastermind. When do we do this? I asked. Tomorrow afternoon. I'll call her this morning. Set up the meeting for 2 p.m. at the Riverside Cafe. Public place, lots of witnesses, but enough ambient noise that she'll feel like she can talk freely. You'll already be there, sitting at a corner booth. I'll have plainclothes officers at 3 different tables. When she confesses, when we have everything we need on tape, they'll move in. She paused. But Liam, you need to understand something. The woman who shows up tomorrow won't be the woman you married. Maybe she never was. You need to be prepared for that. I nodded slowly, my throat tight. What about Lucas? Where will he be? Safe. I'm arranging for him to stay with a child advocate, someone trained to work with kids in trauma situations. He'll be comfortable, protected, and far away from all of this. After tomorrow, after the arrest, you'll need to get him into therapy. What he's been through. What he witnessed. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. I already knew my son would be carrying this for the rest of his life. There's one more thing, Emberlyn said, her voice softer now. Chad, we need to pick him up simultaneously. If Kinsley gets arrested and he hears about it, he'll run or destroy evidence. I've already contacted Detective Morrison at the precinct. They'll raid his apartment the moment we have Kinsley in custody. I sat there, trying to process everything. 24 hours ago, I'd been kissing my wife goodbye at the airport, completely oblivious. Now I was planning a sting operation to put her in prison for the rest of her life. What if she doesn't confess? I asked. What if she's smarter than we think? Emberlyn gathered her papers and stood up. Then we go with what we have. The burner phone, the blueprints, the text messages, your son's testimony. It's not perfect, but it might be enough. But trust me, Liam, I've seen 100 criminals walk into traps they built themselves. Kinsley won't be any different. She thinks she's untouchable, and that arrogance is going to put her away for life. I left her office as the city woke up around me. I needed to check on Lucas, needed to see his face and remember why I was doing this. But as I drove back to the motel, I couldn't shake the image of tomorrow, of sitting across from Kinsley, looking into her eyes, and seeing a stranger, a killer, someone who'd held our son as a baby and decided, years later, that he was disposable. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Tomorrow, she was going to learn what happens when you underestimate an engineer. We don't just build things, we know exactly how to take them apart. The Riverside Cafe was exactly the kind of place Kinsley would feel comfortable. Exposed brick walls, overpriced lattes, people typing on MacBooks pretending to write screenplays. I arrived at 1:30 p.m., 30 minutes early, wearing the wire Emberlin had given me. It was taped to my chest, hidden under a button-down shirt and a blazer. Every heartbeat felt like it was hammering against the microphone. I ordered a black coffee I didn't drink and sat in the corner booth where I could see the entrance. Detective Morrison was 2 tables over, dressed like a grad student, nose buried in a textbook. 2 more plainclothes officers were scattered throughout the cafe. We were ready. Now we just had to wait for the star of the show. At 1:58 p.m., Kinsley walked through the door. I felt my breath catch. She was wearing all black, a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's rent. Her hair pulled back in a sleek bun, oversized sunglasses covering half her face. The grieving widow costume. But there was something else. Something I noticed immediately. She was smiling. Not the sad, brave smile of someone who'd just lost everything. It was excitement, anticipation. She was practically vibrating with it as she scanned the room, looking for the insurance investigator, who was about to hand her the first installment of her blood money. Her eyes swept past me once, then snapped back. The sunglasses came off slowly, and I watched her face drain of color like someone had opened a tap. For 3 full seconds, she just stood there, frozen in the doorway, her mouth slightly open, her hand gripping her purse so hard her knuckles went white. I'd seen that expression once before, years ago, when she'd thought she'd hit a dog with her car and then realized it was just a trash bag, relief mixed with confusion. But this time, there was something else underneath, something that looked a lot like fear. Liam. Her voice cracked on my name. She took a step toward the table, then stopped, like she wasn't sure I was real. How are you? I gestured to the seat across from me. Sit down, Kinsley. We need to talk. She didn't move. People were starting to stare. A barista paused mid-pour, sensing drama. Kinsley seemed to realize she was making a scene. She smoothed her dress, took a breath, and slid into the booth across from me. Up close, I could see the makeup couldn't quite hide the dark circles under her eyes. She hadn't been sleeping. Good. Where's Lucas? She asked, and I had to give her credit. She sounded genuinely concerned. Is he okay? When I heard about the explosion, I thought, you thought we were dead, I finished. Both of us. That was the plan, wasn't it? Her face did something complicated. What are you talking about? Liam, I've been losing my mind. I flew back the second I heard. The house is gone. Everything is gone. I thought I'd lost you both. I've been calling hospitals, calling the police. Lucas told me, I said quietly. In the airport parking lot. He told me what you said on the phone, about the collateral damage, about the gas. The cafe seemed to go quiet, even though the espresso machine was still hissing and someone's indie playlist was still warbling through the speakers. Kinsley's eyes went very, very still. He's 8 years old, Liam. He misheard. He gets confused. He saved our lives. I leaned forward, keeping my voice level. We weren't in the house when it exploded. We were on Morrison Hill. I watched 2 men walk in with your key. I watched them leave. And then I watched our home turn into a fireball. I paused. And then you called me crying, pretending you didn't know I was alive. She opened her mouth, closed it. I could see her brain working, trying to find the right play, the right story. "This is insane," she finally said. "You're in shock. You're traumatized. Whatever Lucas thinks he heard." "I found the burner phone in your car," I said. "I read the messages. All of them. I know about Chad. I know about the debt. I know about Hawaii. And I know you studied my blueprints to make it look like engineering failure." Her face went blank. Completely blank. Like a mask had fallen off and there was nothing underneath. "I was trying to help you," I said. "And this was the script Emberlyn had written. I know Chad must have pressured you, threatened you, maybe. You were scared. You didn't know what else to do. If you tell me the truth now, if you help me understand, we can." And that's when Kinsley started laughing. Not hysterical laughter, not nervous laughter. Cold, genuine amusement. She leaned back in the booth and shook her head. And when she spoke, her voice was different. Stripped of pretense. "Oh, Liam. Sweet, brilliant, stupid Liam. You really think Chad came up with this?" She was still smiling. But it wasn't the smile I knew. This was something feral, something that had been hiding behind the mask of my wife for God knows how long. "Chad is a degenerate gambler who can't even pick a winning slot machine," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You think he had the brains to plan something like this? He couldn't plan a birthday party without screwing it up. No, baby, this was all me." She leaned forward, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Pride. Dark, twisted pride. "I spent 6 months studying your work, your precious blueprints, your safety protocols, all that engineering genius you're so proud of. I learned every weak point in that house, every place where a little tampering would look like an accident." My stomach turned, but I kept my face neutral. The wire was recording every word. I needed her to keep talking. "Why?" I asked, and my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "Why would you do this?" She laughed again, sharper this time. "Because I was suffocating, Liam. Do you have any idea what it's like being married to someone who's so content? You were happy with your little engineering job, happy with your suburban life, happy playing dad to a kid who cries when his fish dies. I wanted more. I wanted freedom. I wanted money that was mine, not ours, and you and Lucas." She said our son's name like it tasted bad. "You were anchors around my neck." "Lucas is your son," I said, my hands clenching under the table. "He's 8 years old. He loves you." "He's exhausting," she snapped. "Always needing something, always wanting attention, always asking why about everything. Do you know what it's like to smile at him every morning when all I wanted was silence? When all I wanted was to be anywhere else?" Her voice rose slightly, and I saw Detective Morrison shift in his seat 2 tables over. "And you wanted to move to Seattle. Seattle, another boring city, another boring life, another decade of this prison. I couldn't do it anymore. I wouldn't." I felt bile rising in my throat, but I kept pushing. "So you decided to kill us, to murder your own family." "I decided to start over," she corrected, like there was a difference. "The insurance money would have set me up for life. Chad and I could have gone somewhere warm, somewhere nobody knew us. We could have been free. And honestly, Liam, you and Lucas going together, it would have been quick, painless. Better than dragging out some ugly divorce where you took half of everything and got custody because you're the good parent." She made air quotes with her fingers, mocking. "This way was cleaner." "Cleaner," I repeated. "Well, you studied my engineering plan specifically to blame me. You wanted me to die and have my reputation destroyed." She shrugged, actually shrugged. "You're the one who designed the renovation. The investigation would have found your signature on every blueprint. The media would have eaten it up. Hotshot engineer cuts corners on his own house, kills himself and his kid. Maybe there would have been lawsuits against your firm. I didn't really care about that part. I just needed the official cause to be accidental, so the insurance would pay double. Her eyes glittered. $4.5 million. Liam. That's what you and Lucas were worth. Not bad, considering. I could feel my heart pounding against the wire. Every word she was saying was being recorded, catalogued, preserved forever. But I needed the final piece. What about when I called you, after the explosion? You were crying. I was panicking, she said flatly. When you said you were watching it burn, I knew something had gone wrong. I knew you'd survived. For about 5 minutes, I thought maybe I could salvage it, play the concerned wife, act confused, deny everything. But then you said you saw them use my key, and I knew you'd put it together. She tilted her head, studying me. So I hung up, and I started planning my next move. Which was what? I asked. She leaned in close, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. Disappear. Take the money I had stashed in offshore accounts you didn't know about, by the way, and vanish before you could prove anything. Chad's already got new IDs lined up. We were supposed to leave tonight. She smiled, and it was the cruelest thing I'd ever seen. But then I got that call about the insurance paperwork, about the advance check, and I thought, you know what? Maybe I can still get that money. Maybe I can still make this work. After all, what do you really have? A scared kid's story. Some text messages I can claim were faked. Her confidence was stunning, absolutely stunning. Here's what's going to happen, she continued, her voice smooth as poison. You're going to let me walk out of here, because if you don't, if you try to make this some big dramatic scene, I'll tell everyone you're having a psychotic break. I'll say you're so traumatized from the explosion that you're inventing conspiracy theories. I'll cry on cue. I'll play the worried wife trying to get her mentally unstable husband help. And people will believe me, Liam. They always do. She started to stand up, gathering her purse. So yeah, it's a shame you survived. It's a shame I have to spend money on lawyers now instead of spending it on a beach in Maui. But that's life, I guess. Messy, unpredictable. Kind of like... I opened my blazer. The small black wire was clearly visible, taped to my chest, the tiny microphone picking up every syllable. Kinsley stopped mid-sentence, her eyes locking onto it, the color drained from her face for the second time that afternoon. Kind of like being recorded, I finished. Every word, Kinsley. Every single word. Your confession. Your motive. Your contempt for our son. All of it. Crystal clear. I stood up slowly. You're right about one thing. This is messy, but not for me. For you. Because you just confessed to attempted double murder, and there are 3 police officers in this cafe who heard every word. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. And then Detective Morrison stood up, badge in hand, and said the words I'd been waiting to hear. Kinsley Harmon, you're under arrest. The cafe erupted into chaos. Detective Morrison moved toward our table with his badge held high, and the 2 other plainclothes officers flanked him from either side. Kinsley's eyes darted between them, between me, between the exit, like a trapped animal looking for an escape route that didn't exist. No, she said, her voice rising. No, this is entrapment. He set me up. You can't... You have the right to remain silent, Morrison said calmly, pulling out handcuffs. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. I didn't mean it, Kinsley shrieked, and now everyone in the cafe was staring. Phones came out, people started recording. He twisted my words. I was upset. I was in shock. I didn't know what I was saying. But it was too late. The other officers had her arms now, pulling them behind her back. The handcuffs clicked into place with a sound that seemed impossibly loud. Kinsley fought against them, her designer heels scraping against the floor. Liam, please, tell them I didn't mean it. I would never hurt Lucas. I would never... You called him collateral damage, I said, my voice flat. You said he was better off dead than being a burden. That's on tape too. her face contorted, fury replacing panic. "You bastard. You self-righteous, pathetic bastard. You think you're so much better than me. You think you're some kind of hero." Morrison started walking her toward the door, and she twisted back to look at me, mascara running down her cheeks now, all that careful makeup cracking. "You'll never prove I actually did anything. Those men, whoever they were, you can't connect them to me. Chad will never talk. He's too scared of Dimitri." She was screaming now, drawing stares from people on the sidewalk outside. "You've got nothing but a recording of me venting, of me being emotional. My lawyers will rip this apart." I followed them outside, into the bright afternoon sun. A squad car was waiting at the curb. "Actually," I said quietly, "Chad's already talking." Her entire body went rigid. "What?" "Simultaneous arrest," Morrison said, opening the back door of the squad car. "My colleagues picked him up about 10 minutes ago. Soon as we had you on tape, we moved on him. Found the burner phone, found receipts for the guys he hired, found messages about meeting Dimitri's crew. And you know what the funny thing is?" He smiled without humor. "He gave you up in less than 5 minutes, told us everything. How it was your idea, how you planned it, how you promised him the insurance money. He's trying to cut a deal right now, throwing you under the bus so hard there's tire marks." The fight went out of Kinsley all at once. She sagged against the car, her face pale, her eyes unfocused. "No," she whispered. "He wouldn't. He loves me. We were going to. He loves himself more," I said. "And you should have known that. A guy who gambles away $87,000 and lets his girlfriend plan a double murder to cover his debts. That's not love, Kinsley. That's desperation. And desperate people sell out the person next to them if it means saving their own skin." Morrison guided her into the back seat. She didn't resist anymore. She just stared at me through the window, her expression somewhere between hatred and disbelief. "You know what the worst part is," I said, leaning down so she could hear me through the glass. "You almost got away with it. If Lucas hadn't overheard you, if he hadn't warned me, you'd be planning your trip to Hawaii right now. You'd have won. But you underestimated our son. The same kid you called exhausting. The same kid you wrote off as collateral damage. He's the reason you're in handcuffs." I straightened up. "He saved both our lives. And now he's safe from you. Forever." Morrison shut the door and turned to me. "We'll need you to come down to the station, give a formal statement, hand over that wire." I nodded, suddenly exhausted, the adrenaline crash hitting me like a freight train. "What happens now?" "Now, we build the case. We've got her confession. We've got Chad's testimony. We've got the physical evidence. The burner phone, the blueprints with her handwriting, the texts. We've got the 2 guys who actually set the gas leak. And believe me, they'll flip on whoever hired them once they realize they're looking at felony murder charges. This is airtight, Mr. Harmon. Your wife is going to prison for a very long time." The squad car pulled away, and I watched it disappear into traffic. Other cafe patrons were still filming, still whispering, still trying to piece together what they'd just witnessed. A barista came outside with my untouched coffee. Sir, you forgot this." I looked at it and almost laughed. "Keep it," I said. "I don't think I'll be finishing it." I walked to my own car, my legs feeling like lead, my mind spinning. I needed to call Emberlyn. I needed to get to Lucas. I needed to hold my son and tell him it was over, that the monster was caught, that we were safe. But as I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, I allowed myself one moment of pure, undiluted relief. She was done. Kinsley was finished. And whatever happened next, whatever trials and testimony and trauma we had to wade through, at least I knew this. My son would never have to be afraid of his own mother again. I started the car and drove toward the safe house where Lucas was waiting, where Detective Morrison said a child advocate had been keeping him comfortable and distracted. And for the first time in 48 hours, I let myself believe that maybe Just maybe, we were going to be okay. The trial took 8 months to reach court. 8 months of depositions, media circuses, and lawyers arguing over every scrap of evidence. Kinsley hired a defense team that cost more than most people make in a lifetime. Apparently, those offshore accounts she'd mentioned were real and well-funded. Her attorneys tried everything. They claimed the wire recording was inadmissible. They claimed I'd coerced her confession through emotional manipulation. They claimed she'd been having a mental health crisis, and nothing she'd said in that cafe should be taken literally. The judge shot down every motion. The evidence was too strong, too clear, too damning. Chad took a plea deal 3 months in. In exchange for testifying against Kinsley, the DA dropped the attempted murder charges down to conspiracy and reckless endangerment. He'd serve 15 years instead of life. I watched him take the stand, watched him explain in painful detail how Kinsley had approached him with the plan, how she'd convinced him it was foolproof, how she'd promised him freedom and money and a life without debt. His voice shook when the prosecutor asked him about Lucas. She said the kid was part of the package. That if we were going to do this, we had to do it completely. No witnesses, no complications. The jury members' faces hardened. 2 of them were parents. I could see the disgust in their eyes. But the moment that sealed Kinsley's fate came on day 4 of the trial. The prosecution played the cafe recording. The entire thing. 43 minutes of crystal clear audio. The courtroom was dead silent, except for Kinsley's voice coming through the speakers. Cold and clinical, explaining how she'd studied my blueprints, how she'd planned to blame me, how Lucas was exhausting and better off dead. I watched the jury as they listened. A woman in the front row had tears streaming down her face. A man in the back had his jaw clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. And when the recording reached the part where Kinsley said, $4.5 million, Liam, that's what you and Lucas were worth. Not bad, considering. I heard someone in the gallery gasp. Kinsley's attorneys tried to do damage control. They put her on the stand, had her cry on cue, had her claim she'd been manipulated by Chad, that she'd been terrified, that she'd said those things in the cafe because she was trying to protect herself from a husband she claimed had become obsessive and controlling after the explosion. She was good, I'll give her that. She looked small and vulnerable in her conservative blouse and minimal makeup, her voice trembling as she told her version of events. But then the prosecution stood up for cross-examination, and Emberlyn, who'd been hired as a special consultant for the DA's office, tore her apart. Mrs. Harmon, you testified that you were afraid of your husband. Is that correct? Yes, Kinsley said softly. Then why? Emberlyn asked, walking toward the witness stand with a folder in hand. Did you have $340,000 transferred to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands 2 weeks before the explosion? Money your husband didn't know about? Kinsley's face went blank. I was saving for emergencies. Emergencies, Emberlyn repeated. And these emails between you and Chad Barrett, planning your trip to Hawaii, booking a condo under fake names, those were also for emergencies. She slid the printed emails across the witness stand. These are dated 3 weeks before the explosion. You were already planning your new life. With the insurance money that would only pay out if your husband and son were dead? The defense attorney objected, but the judge overruled. Emberlyn kept going, methodical and ruthless. You studied your husband's engineering blueprints. You made notes about sabotaging gas lines. You hired 2 men through your boyfriend's connections to break into your home and set a timer. And then you flew out of town to establish an alibi. She paused. Does that sound like the behavior of a frightened wife? Or does it sound like the behavior of someone who planned a double murder for financial gain? Kinsley opened her mouth, then closed it. Her attorney called for a recess, but the damage was done. The jury had seen her mask slip. Closing arguments took 2 days. The prosecution laid out the timeline, the evidence, the motive. They showed the jury photos of our destroyed home, burned to the foundation. They showed Lucas's school photo, a smiling 8-year-old who'd almost been murdered by his own mother. They played snippets of the cafe recording again, The worst parts. The parts where Kinsley's contempt for her family was most obvious. This wasn't a crime of passion, the lead prosecutor said, his voice echoing through the courtroom. This was calculated, premeditated, cold-blooded. Kinsley Harmon decided her husband and son were worth more dead than alive, and she tried to cash in. The only reason we're here today, the only reason Liam and Lucas Harmon are still breathing, is because an 8-year-old boy overheard his mother plotting their deaths and had the courage to speak up. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the forewoman stood up and read the verdict in a clear, steady voice. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree of Liam Harmon, guilty. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree of Lucas Harmon, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. On the charge of arson, guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud, guilty. 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 All 12 counts. I felt Lucas squeeze my hand. He'd insisted on being there for the verdict, and the judge had allowed it. Kinsley didn't react. She just stared straight ahead, her face carved from stone. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel-grey hair and no patience for nonsense, looked at Kinsley for a long moment before speaking. In my 30 years on the bench, I have seen many crimes, but the calculated nature of this offense, the complete disregard for human life, especially the life of your own child, is among the most disturbing. You weaponized your husband's career against him. You planned to kill your son and call him collateral damage. You showed no remorse, only anger at being caught. She adjusted her glasses. I hereby sentence you to 25 years to life in state prison, with no possibility of parole for 25 years. And I hope, Mrs. Harmon, that you spend every one of those years thinking about the son you tried to murder. Court is adjourned. 1 year later, Lucas and I stood in the driveway of our new house. Not the same neighborhood. I couldn't go back there. Couldn't drive past the empty lot where our old home used to be without feeling my chest tighten. This house was across town, smaller, cozier, with a backyard that faced a little creek where Lucas liked to catch tadpoles on weekends. It was ours, clean, safe, and most importantly, it had no gas lines. I'd designed it myself, top to bottom, every system electric or solar powered. Lucas had been terrified of gas stoves, gas heaters, even the smell of gasoline for months after the explosion. So I'd eliminated every trigger I could. This house couldn't burn, not like the last one. Lucas was in therapy twice a week with Dr. Patel, a child psychologist who specialized in trauma. The nightmares had gotten better. He didn't wake up screaming anymore, didn't check the locks 5 times before bed. But there were still moments, like when someone lit a candle at a restaurant, or when he smelled smoke from a neighbor's fireplace, where his whole body would go rigid, and I'd see that same terror flash across his face. It's okay, buddy, I'd tell him, crouching down to his level. We're safe. I promise. And slowly, over time, he started to believe me. He'd started smiling again, laughing, playing soccer with kids in the neighborhood. He was healing, we both were. I'd left my old engineering firm, too many memories, too many people who looked at me with pity or morbid curiosity. Instead, I'd taken a position teaching at the state university, engineering ethics and safety systems. My first lecture every semester started the same way. My name is Professor Harmon, and I'm going to tell you a story about what happens when someone weaponizes your own work against you. I'd tell them about the blueprints, about the gas lines, about how my own renovation plans had been turned into a murder manual. The students would sit there, stunned, and then I'd drive the point home. Engineering isn't just about math and physics. It's about responsibility. About understanding that every system you design could be used to help people or hurt them, and you need to build with that knowledge. The university loved it. Enrollment in my classes tripled. Students would stay after lectures to ask questions, to tell me their own stories about ethical dilemmas they'd faced. I'd become something I never expected, an advocate for safety, for transparency, for the human element in engineering that textbooks couldn't teach. It gave me purpose. It gave me a way to turn the worst experience of my life into something that might protect someone else's family. And on the days when the anger still bubbled up, when I still wanted to scream at the universe for what Kinsley had tried to do to us, teaching reminded me that I'd won. I was here. Lucas was here. And we were building something new. The civil lawsuit had been straightforward. I'd sued Kinsley for every penny she had. The offshore accounts, her car, her jewelry, everything. The court had sided with me immediately. Turns out, judges don't look kindly on people who try to murder their families for insurance money. I'd also sued the insurance company on principle, demanding they publicly acknowledge the attempted fraud. They'd settled, issuing a statement about policy changes for high-value claims. Kinsley went to prison not just convicted, but completely broke. Chad's assets had been seized too, split between paying back Dimitri and covering legal fees. There was a certain poetry to it. They'd planned to run away with millions, and instead they'd both ended up with nothing. I'd gotten letters from Kinsley, 3 of them in the first 6 months. I never opened them. Emberlyn advised me to keep them sealed, hand them over to her office, just in case Kinsley wrote something incriminating or threatening that could be used to extend her sentence. "Let her scream into the void," Emberlyn had said. "You don't owe her your attention." She was right. Whatever Kinsley wanted to say, apologies, justifications, more manipulation, I didn't need to hear it. She was in a maximum security facility 3 states away, and that's where she'd stay until Lucas was in his 30s. By the time she got out, he'd be a grown man, hopefully with a family of his own, and she'd be a stranger he barely remembered. Lucas came running up the driveway now, holding a soccer ball, his face flushed and happy. "Dad, Mr. Chen says I can join the travel team if I keep practicing. Can I?" "Please." I ruffled his hair, feeling something warm and fierce bloom in my chest. "Yeah, buddy, you can join." He whooped and ran back toward the creek, where a couple of neighborhood kids were waiting. I watched him go, this resilient, brave little human who'd saved both our lives and somehow still found a way to be a kid. He'd asked me once, about 3 months after the trial, why his mom had wanted to hurt us. I'd thought about lying, about sugarcoating it, but he deserved the truth. "Sometimes people get lost," I'd told him. "They make choices that hurt the people who love them, and it's not your fault. It was never your fault." I walked back into the house, into the kitchen where I'd installed extra smoke detectors and CO2 monitors, where every appliance had a safety shutoff, where I'd built redundancy into every system because I couldn't afford to feel unsafe ever again. The coffee maker beeped. I poured a cup and looked out the window at Lucas playing in the fading afternoon light. We'd lost a house. We'd lost a wife and mother, or maybe just the illusion of one. But we'd gained something too, a clarity about what mattered, about who we were without her, about the strength we didn't know we had. I raised my mug in a silent toast to the life we were building from the ashes, to second chances, to survival, and to the fact that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. I think about that night sometimes. The night I watched my house burn from Morrison Hill, Lucas shaking beside me, everything we owned turning to smoke and ash. I think about how close we came. 30 minutes. That's all that separated us from being inside when it exploded. 30 minutes, and an 8-year-old boy's courage to tell his father the truth. People ask me if I'm angry, if I hate Kinsley for what she tried to do. And honestly, I don't feel much of anything toward her anymore. Hate requires energy, requires her to still have space in my head, and I've worked too hard to reclaim that space. What I feel now is gratitude. Weird, right? But I'm grateful Lucas and I get to wake up every morning. I'm grateful we rebuilt, that we found strength we didn't know we had, that we turned trauma into something that helps other people. I look at my son now, this funny, smart, resilient kid who loves soccer and superhero movies and asking 1,000 questions about how things work. And I see a survivor, not a victim, not collateral damage, a survivor. And I see myself that way too. Kinsley thought she could erase us for a payout. Instead, she erased herself. She's a ghost now, locked away where she can't hurt anyone else, while Lucas and I are here, living, laughing, building a future she'll never be part of. Money builds houses. That's easy. You hire contractors, you draw up plans, you pour foundations and frame walls and wire electricity. But trust builds homes. And we lost our house that night. Yeah. But we saved our home. Lucas and I, we're each other's home now. That's something Kinsley could never take away, no matter how carefully she planned, no matter how many blueprints she studied. She underestimated what we meant to each other, and that miscalculation cost her everything. I escaped the fire. But you know what? Some dangers don't announce themselves with flames and explosions. Some dangers come with a smile and a cup of coffee. Picture this. You're about to sign over your company to your son, the business you built from nothing, your legacy. Your daughter-in-law brings you coffee. She's always so thoughtful, so caring. You're raising the cup to your lips when your housekeeper, an older woman who's been with your family for 20 years, suddenly knocks it out of your hand. The cup shatters, coffee everywhere, and she's trembling, tears in her eyes, whispering, "I'm sorry, sir, I'm so sorry." But I saw what she put in there. Your daughter-in-law goes pale. Your son looks confused. And you realize the person you were about to trust with everything just tried to poison you in your own home. What do you do when you secretly switch the cups without them seeing? When the poison meant for you ends up in someone else's hands? Trust me, that story gets dark fast, and you won't believe how it ends.